There we go. What's up, everyone? Welcome back. It is Wednesday night. It is time for another episode of Mythic Conversations. Thank you all very much for joining me this evening. Whether you're tuning in live, whether you're catching the replay, thank you very much for joining me. I'm your host, Jeremy Gerard. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for Four Horsemen Studios, and of course, the host of the kind of longest running Mythic Legions or Legion show, dedicated show, I would say. It's definitely an interesting night tonight. It's a bit of a celebratory night. 10 years of Mythic Customs, which is crazy, right? Not 10 years of this show per se, but it was about 10 years ago that I started customizing Mythic Legion. So if you know my backstory with this line, I was an original Kickstarter backer. I mean, I was collecting Four Horsemen Studios long before Mythic Legions. I mean, all the way back to when they worked for McFarlane Toys, but certainly once they started their own studio back on those old message boards, I was on those old message boards. I was participating in the fantastic exclusive voting, buying Seventh Kingdom and Gothtropolis and all that stuff. So by the time that the Kickstarter for Mythic Legions rolled around in 2015, I had been supporting, Four Horsemen Studios for a while. And that first Kickstarter, I went all in plus extras. At the time, they had the Kickstarter itself, and then they did a pre-order on their website at the time. I ordered an all-in off that as well. So by the time that the actual order shipped, I had 2 full all-ins plus some extras. And I remember in the lead up, because remember, we didn't have these in hand at this point. So we didn't know about the interchangeability. And even if you go and look at that original video from that first Kickstarter, they talk about swappable armor and heads, but they don't really focus on like breaking the figures down. And it's a testament to the fact that while interchangeability and swappability was always baked into this line, it became so much more a part of the line, and to such a more of a degree than anyone at the studio like ever imagined it would be. It's an incredibly interesting kind of history if you think through it. But in the lead up to those arriving, people were doing kind of like digibashes. So they were taking the photos of the figures and using Photoshop to mix and match parts and everything. And I remember like the first thing I wanted to do, and it's one of the first things I did when I got the figures in, which by today's standard is so pedestrian. It was just a head swap, but back then felt huge, right? I opened up a blood armor and I opened up a Carpathius and I put the Carpathius vampire head on the blood armor body. And it immediately had kind of like that Bram Stoker's Dracula type vibe, right? And again, it was so easy, just a simple part swap. Of course, I did what a lot of people did, got the Barbarian Builder kit and kind of made my not War Duke figure out of it. But those early pop and swaps with the line, with that very limited library, that very much set the stage for what would become, my customizing journey, my customizing hobby. And I say it with no small amount of pride that, I was one of the very first Legions customizers that were doing, that type of work with this line, sharing that. I'm incredibly thrilled that the kind of camaraderie and sharing that we had in the early days of customizing Legions has carried through the line. We very much were ambassadors of that early on, of sharing our recipes. I genuinely remember by the way, tonight's going to be a little bit of a walk down memory lane, so prepared for that. But I remember pre-Cabal that there were a few other Legions groups, and I genuinely remember getting kicked out of one, which is funny when you think about it today. But I got kicked out of one because I used to share the recipes for the parts that I used, including like a custom head or something like that. And the moderator of that group at the time, whose name I can't even remember what the group was. I don't believe it's any active any longer. But I remember they had like a very strict no sales policy. And they basically felt like by detailing the parts you had used, that you were like trying to sell it, even though I had no financial stake in any of these pieces. This is again long before Wolf King Customs and all that stuff, Legion Shop, long before any of that. But I remember like getting kicked out of the group and then reaching out to the guy and being like, dude, you kicked me out of the group. Like, what's going on? And well, you can't share that stuff. And then he let me back in and I started posting again and I got in trouble again, was finally just like, you know what, dude, forget it. Like, this is ridiculous. I'm trying to give credit to other artists and creators who lent their work to the custom I put together. And this was right around the time that the Cabal came around, and it ended up being a very logical transition to start posting in there. But it's funny if you think about it now. Trevor's saying I got kicked out of one for putting my Instagram on a photo there, probably the same group. Yeah, it probably was. And it's interesting how, really early on, because I get any group's got to have rules and it can be the Wild West if you don't. But it's interesting how those type of rules ended up, being exactly what made this community so great, from those early days, the sense of camaraderie and sharing. I can't tell you how many times I've had people reach out to me that said like, oh, I'm going to copy your custom. I hope you don't mind. And I'm like, goodness, no, that's why I give the full recipe of parts I used. So if anyone wants to build this for themselves, they can. The lack of gatekeeping for this community and certainly for the customizing aspect, I think is such a testament to how cool everything is. And when you see people like, Curtis and Jesse and, the Purple Gang and, everybody else, there's a litany of different people, Dirk, who are giving back now, who are sharing with the community how to do this stuff and really taking that torch. It's incredibly exciting to see, knowing that, what I was a part of in those early days helped lend itself to that. And that brings us to this 10-year anniversary, which is very, very exciting. But I'm going to get back to that in a minute. Before I do, let's just talk about a couple news items that are going on. By the way, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Looking in the chat here, lots of messages came in while I was rambling, as I do. Let me see if there's anything that I do need to address. Some people saying their Jersey Devil came in. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Scapular, the Crypt Breaker 2, that's part of the Rising Suns wave, hopefully shipping soon. It is in production now. You can check our website, our homepage, whenever we make updates like that. We're pretty transparent about whenever we have news. So some people are saying that YouTube was down and that stuff wasn't playing, but it looks like it's playing now. Someone saying, I love hearing stories about the early days. I love reminiscing about the early days. Gone through. Jeremy the Mythic Rebel. Yes, I am such a rule breaker. 22 days. Goodness. So Hank is saying YouTube is definitely having issues, but hopefully it's okay now. I mean, not much I can do about it. So I'm just going to press forward. So what's going on? So we just talked about the Jersey Devil. Someone just said the Jersey Devil was shipping. So let me share that. So we've got some visuals to look at while I'm talking. So yeah, Jersey Devil has been shipping for a couple weeks now. It arrived a few weeks ago. Very cool. I posted on the Four Horsemen social channels a bunch of community photos of the Jersey Devil yesterday. That was cool to see. It's cool to see some of the photography coming up. Iron Chef 56 saying Jersey Devil is so good in hand. Pictures do not do it justice. Certainly not a knock on Trevor and his wonderful photography, one of which we see here. But yeah, I mean, there's no substitute to see something in hand and to be able to play with it and pose it and stuff like that. We're seeing a lot of that with the Jersey Devil. I'm seeing a lot of people regretting that they either skipped the figure entirely or they didn't buy an extra. So I will tell you that Jersey Devil will be at LegionsCon. And speaking of LegionsCon, we got Thomas Bellett in the chat here saying exactly 3 weeks from now, we will be lounging in the hotel lobby. Yeah, you'll be hanging out with the unofficial, the official start of Mythic Weekend, where you're all at the hotel chilling out while Mythic Conversations plays. Yeah, 3 weeks. That's so crazy. 21 days. Oh, it's absolutely nuts. Yeah. Also, Warlock saying 3 weeks we'll be at the fire pit at this time that Wednesday. Yep, absolutely. So Jersey Devil, we will have Jersey Devil at LegionsCon. Additionally, for those who are not going to LegionsCon, I'm sorry. You really should go to LegionsCon. It's awesome. But we will drop some additional stock of the Jersey Devil online at some point soon as well. So very, very cool. So that is shipping now. We will, I mentioned earlier about updates when things are shipping. Yeah, if you go to sourcehorseman.com and you look right on the homepage, we actually always share all of that information right on the homepage. I will show you what I mean. So right on the homepage, if you scroll down where it says release status, we literally list all of that. You can also get it under our company, product release status. Literally, anytime we get news that we can share, we post it here. So we are very, very transparent. So if you're ever wondering where something is status-wise, we do try to keep this very, very updated. In terms of street dates and things shipping, I had this on the Cosmic Legions Ox Crew Book 1 wave. So not only has that all shipped from Store Horseman, but today, the 15th, was actually retailer street date. So very, very cool. This is now available from our retailers as in-stock items, those who still have it in stock. You know, I've said this many times before. The way that most retailers operate is those that take pre-orders, they figure out how many they need to fill the pre-orders. They maybe order a small amount of extras. And then once they arrive, they fill their pre-orders, and anything that's left, they're able to sell. So they have a finite amount of inventory. And this is whether we're talking about an online retailer or a brick and mortar store. So if you have been waiting for these figures, you definitely don't want to wait too long. Yes, we will have these in limited quantities at LegionsCon. Of course, all the stuff that we are now having at, like, from the Necronominous wave forward, any of the pre-order discounts, they don't apply once they're now in stock. So the price you're going to pay for these figures at LegionsCon is exactly what you're going to pay from them from retailers as well. So if you want to wait for the show, that's totally cool. I will tell you there will be plenty of other stuff to buy at LegionsCon. Certainly if you want to pick these up in advance so you don't have to lug them home from the show, support some of our retailers as well. If you go to sourcehorseman.com/retailers, you'll see a list of those. But these have been getting absolutely awesome reviews. It's no secret Cosmic Legions is not as popular as Mythic Legions, which makes total sense. Mythic Legions has been around for 10 years. Cosmic's been around for about 5. So it's about half the amount of time. But this particular wave, I've seen so many people saying that this feels like a step forward for the Cosmic line. Playing with those Ox Crew armors, that Kern Ray figure is one of the coolest figures I think we've done across any of the lines. It's just a great overall group of characters and group of toys. So this is one that a lot of people are saying, if you slept on the Ox Crew stuff, you're going to be kicking yourself, because this is the stuff that's certainly going to be harder to find down the road. Kind of keeping to a bit of a cosmic-y type feel is what happened this past week with Onell Design. So Onell Design, the creators of Glyos, they are the ones that we partnered with for the first Infinite Legions drop. And one of the things that was cool, if you go to onelldesign.com and you click on store, you can check out these awesome figures. So when we did the project with Matt and Mark from Onell Design, creating an Infinite Legions version of their flagship Faden character, Matt really wanted to keep the project going, keep the collaboration going. And in addition to us taking his character and bringing it into it's a very cosmic-y figure. It's part of the Infinite line, but it's obviously uses a lot of cosmic parts, some of those Ox Crew armor pieces for the Infinite Legions. But he also wanted to do a Glyos compatible version. Yeah, it's almost like figure inception, where we took his idea and his character, brought it into Infit, then he took that and brought it back into Glyos. But they dropped these on their store this past Sunday night, and these 3 characters, which were limited to 1 per person, they all sold out in like the first hour. They were gone for all of them. So Onell Design has been around for 19 years. In 19 years, they have never done a pre-order. In 19 years, it has always been one and done sales. If you miss the drop, if they sell out, aftermarket is your only option. This is the first time in 19 years in business that they have done this reorder, pre-order thing, where these figures are now available with no limits, available for pre-order at onelldesign.com right now. The pre-order ends this Sunday, so you got to get in there to get them. And I'm going to bring this down for a second, because right over here, that's my Glyos collection. And right on my Glyos shelf, I've got these figures. So I'm going to tell you, these things are, I dig Glyos. These are larger than a lot of regular Glyos. Like if I grab a standard Thanos figure, you can see how much bigger it is. But the cool thing is the parts are all compatible. So these are still 100% Glyos figures. The parts all technically work, not technically, the parts all absolutely work together. So it's all still part of that Glyos system of parts. Incredibly fun. I'm so excited to have these in hand, to play around with these. A lot of people I've seen, which warms my heart, because that's what it's all about. I've seen a lot of people saying that like they picked these up and they were their first Glyos. And similarly, we've seen a number of people from the Glyos community that have now jumped on to Legions, who are like full on into what we're doing in our community. And that, at the end of the day, that is the spirit of Infinite Legions. It's not only working with cool people to make cool toys, it's cross-pollinating those fan bases and kind of saying like, hey, look at this other thing. Look at this cool idea, this cool company, this cool character, whatever. This is something that we really dig and we think you dig it as well. So the fact that we're getting that kind of crossover is so cool. These things are a ton of fun. They do come with extra heads. So, you see the heads that are on the promos here, where we've got the Sarvos head, we've got the Faden head, and we've got the anti-Faden head. They all come with those extra heads. So it's actually very, very cool that you can use any of the heads on any of the characters. And the Infinite Legions Faden that we did came with multiple heads as well. So yeah, they are bigger, Dave, than normal Glyos. If you've actually got the Manglord figures, they're like very similar in size to the Manglord figures. They're super cool, totally compatible, but they've got that bigness and that chunkiness to them. So those are super cool. Those again are available at onelldesign.com. What else is going on? So obviously last week, Eric and I were here talking about the graveyard zombies and graveyard skeletons. That pre-order is going along as well. That pre-order goes until midnight on Halloween. Additionally, what I'll tell you is retailers are now taking pre-orders for the Legacies of Mythos, Otho, and Urzok. Now, they have to place their pre-order numbers next week. So if you're waiting on this, if you didn't get in on the in-stock drop, or you didn't order extras that you wanted from Store Horseman, if you're going to order it from our retail partners, my suggestion to you is a lot of retailers don't charge up front. So there's no reason why you have to wait until they arrive. I've said this before. Retailers place order numbers based on pre-orders received. So if you want to secure these, get that pre-order in before the end of next week so they can place the accurate pre-order numbers and we can get these into your hands. The plan with these is to have these ready to ship in early 2026. That's the great thing about the way we did these, where they're available as in-stock items, and then we do a pre-order because they're ready to go. Once we give the numbers to the factory, we can pretty much turn the production right on. Very cool. The last thing that I will talk about before I go back into the main topic at hand is the video game and what's going on with that. So a couple weeks ago, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, 5 years ago, literally at this point, Forceman Studios partnered with a game studio called Great Hall Games to put out a Mythic Legions video game that eventually was announced as Mythic Legions Tactics War of the Aether Blade. So after 5 years, we did 2 different crowd funds for that. They've been at LegionsCon for years, showing off their progress. We announced just a couple weeks ago that both companies decided that we are not going forward with this partnership any longer. The game is going to be released as is. So it is still got a lot of cool levels. It's got a lot of things you can do in it, but it's certainly not the game that was originally promised. So in addition to releasing that game to all backers, anybody that does want to request a refund, there is a mechanism for you to do that. You can email, I believe it's actually, I will read it to you. I will reel it because I posted about this and I want to give accurate information. And part of the reason I'm just explaining this is just to address it heads on, because, this sucks. There's no way around it. Like, this is definitely a bummer, but I want people to understand kind of what's going on. So if you want a refund, you've got to send an email that you want the refund by November 1st, and it's going to be to mythiclegionstactics@gmail.com. There is a post on our Instagram and on our Facebook that's got this information, so you can have it there. But what I will tell you is, when, 5 years ago, when we partnered with this company, they were a couple of guys who had worked at other game studios who were scrappy and they were hungry and they were ready to do something of their own, something worthwhile. Sound familiar? Yeah, it sounds like Four Horsemen Studios, right? It's a very similar story. So, while in retrospect, I've seen people say like, oh, I realize they shouldn't have partnered with them. They should have gone with a more established studio. Yeah, in retrospect, that absolutely would have been a better course of action. But 5 years ago, this company and this community was very, very different. Seeing something of themselves in the hunger of this company, it's sad that, to Great Hall Games, it seemed like a good fit. Everyone at Great Hall Games are super cool people. They worked really hard. It just didn't work out. I think the fact that they're offering this refund is unique in Kickstarter. Most Kickstarters would deliver a half-baked product and say, hey, you get what you get and you don't get upset. There's no guarantees on Kickstarter. The fact that they're going to deliver that and say, look, anybody that isn't happy, you can request a refund. I will tell you point blank, do not feel bad about requesting a refund. That's why it's there. We don't want anybody to say, oh, I paid for it and didn't get what I wanted. If that's the case, ask for that refund so you can get made whole. Hell, come to LegionsCon and spend the money on something else if you want to support the lines and stuff like that. But no one should feel guilty about requesting a refund. Similarly, I've seen some people with a sentiment of, you know what, they tried really hard. I'm going to let them keep the money. That's cool too. I appreciate that type of approach to this. But again, don't feel bad about requesting a refund should that be what you feel is appropriate for you. At the end of the day, I think I definitely know we would make different decisions today, and we have made different decisions. I've seen some confusion about the video game Mythic Legions Tactics being confused with the role-playing game for Mythic Legions, the role-playing game. Some of the lessons we learned during the video game influenced how we're going to go forward with the role-playing game, including the fact that we're doing it in-house. We had people that were interested in licensing this property from us to make a tabletop game. And we elected not to go that route. We elected instead to do it in-house. In part, I don't want to say it's totally because of the experience with the video game, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that didn't factor in some way into our decision-making process. The reality is we wanted to be able to drive this new game ourselves, the tabletop game. We wanted the control. And while we've brought in some outside resources to help us with certain aspects, it is very much being done in-house. Cameron Smith is our game master. He's writing, all the rules and all of, the gameplay type mechanics. You all know the Wolf King Len. We brought Len on to project manage this. He's leading kind of this project as well. Eric, myself, CB, George, all of us have a voice in what's happening with this. So what I will tell anybody if they're concerned about what the role-playing game is going to look like based on what just happened with this other game is it is apples and oranges. It's a very different team. It's a very different product. And I think we benefit from this unfortunate failure with the video game. So that's what I've got for that. I just wanted, since that announcement happened, we've had other stuff on the show talking about, last week with the graveyard and everything like that. It felt weird to do what I'm doing right now and really shift gears from, hey, let's reveal something cool, to have kind of that, I guess, serious conversation about what's going on with the game. But I can tell you full on, at the end of the day, everyone busted their butts. Everyone tried really hard to put out the best possible product they could. It didn't end up working out the way anybody wanted. So it sucks. We can all be bummed about it, but at the very least, we're going to try to make people whole. We're going to try anyone that's upset they didn't get what they paid for. They're going to be able to request a refund. I've seen some people say, oh, you should just refund the credit cards. Unfortunately, it's been so long since they were charged. That's not an option. So, they have to kind of jump through hoops to make that happen, but they're going to jump through those hoops and they're going to make everybody whole, because we want everybody who backed this to feel like they were taken care of. So that's what I've got for that. I'm going to look at the chat here, see what's going on. Yeah, did their best, respect the effort. Absolutely. It was a much smaller community 5 years ago. Nope, there is no way to purchase the game if you did not back it. I mean, we're not going to add insult to injury there. The game is what it is. It's, if you didn't back it, then unfortunately it's going to be available to backers, but that's it. Awesome. All right, so let's get back to the topic at hand, and that was 10 years of Mythic Conversations and kind of what I've got going, what I've got planned for LegionsCon this year. So if you've been following my feed the last, few, I want to say few days, but even possibly the last few weeks, you might have seen me posting some new customs, which, to be honest, is something I haven't done in a while. And I'm going to bring up this photo right here. Share this time. This is the one that I shared today. And, I've been, interestingly, a little more prolific in sharing customs in the last, couple weeks than I have been probably all year. And that's intentional. This has been a very interesting year for me from a customizing standpoint. And, at the start of the show, I was talking a little bit about my kind of customizing journey and being one of the, early customizers in this line. As my role and responsibility has changed, it's been a lot more challenging to keep doing that work. And yeah, I've got Sir Utchak here saying, Utchak steps into the room. Curtis saying, it's been nice seeing customizing Jeremy again. LBC never dies. Well, thank you very much, Curtis. And honestly, it's been very enjoyable to be customizing again. And if you see me looking off screen, it's because I'm trying to bring up a few pictures that I genuinely just forgot to do before the show began. So just kind of prepping myself now. But one of the challenges with customizing, I mean, in the early days, there was a point, as crazy as this sounds, that I posted a new custom almost every day for 2 solid years. I posted something every day for 2 years on my Instagram. The bulk of those posts were brand new customs. And I mean, this was the early days of Mythic Customs, the early days of Mythic Legions. And that kind of that exercise in forcing myself to be creative, to be productive. I got the idea from, there's been a lot of people that have done challenges like this, like write a song every single day or, whatever, record something every single week. Any of these challenges where you force yourself to be creative on very strict and short deadlines, I've always think is very interesting. So I did that for 2 years, and I learned so much in those 2 years. I really cut my teeth as a customizer during that time. And it was also at a time where this line, the customizing aspect of the line, was just so new and a very exciting time. That very much led into early LegionsCon. So that first LegionsCon back in 2019, I'd met Joe Viteri at G-Con that year. It was the year that we revealed the Aether wave. And I wasn't working for the studio at this point. I came to the studio as an invited guest. Joe Vassapolo was there. Trevor Williams was there. This is all periods before any of us were working with Four Horsemen Studio. It was a very interesting time. Nate Barch was there. He was part-time doing freelance for them at that point. Amazing to see now that we're all full-time with the studio. But I remember meeting Joe, and shortly after G-Con, he called me and he said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this Mythic meetup type thing. Would you be interested in helping me organize and run it? And really the idea was just to do a kind of like a meetup customizing showcase, almost like a little art show. And it's why there's still such an art show aspect to LegionsCon today. But those early customs that I did really kind of fueled that first display at LegionsCon. And that first display that I did was very wide open. It was just, I didn't have a theme. I was just kind of showcasing a bunch of customs I had done. I did a few tribute customs there for G.I. Joe that I debuted at the show. So it was very cool. Obviously 2020, we had that was the year that we had the digital, the online show. 2021, we were back in person, and I set up another exhibit. Once again, it was not themed. It was just a bunch of different stuff. And then the 3 years since that point, every one of my shows was, that's funny. Trevor's saying, I was just reading some of our old chats about the first LegionsCon meetup. That's crazy to go back to those early chats, Trevor. My goodness. But the last couple of years, I've had very themed displays for LegionsCon. So the one that we did, goodness, this would have been at the La Quinta Inn the La Quinta Inn in 2022. So that was the one. That was the first year that I said, you know what? I want to curate my display. I don't just want to bring a bunch of random customs. I want to curate it. So this was a point where I was really deep. That was really right when I was doing a lot of work with Wolf King Customs, Len, of course, and with Walter DeMarco. And that trio, I mean, to this day, I look back so nostalgically on that period of my customizing journey. I would conceptualize a character. Sometimes I would sketch it out. Other times I would, just take photo. Like if I wanted to do a badger, I wouldn't necessarily draw a badger. I would take photos that I have a badger and say, this is the style I want. But I would conceptualize what I wanted. Walter DeMarco, wonderful sculptor from Argentina. He would sculpt the pieces. Len from Wolf King would print them up. Then I'd get them back, come in full circle. I'd paint them up, create the custom, and they would go for sale at Wolf King Customs. And so much of what we did in those early days were the critter figures. So we all know that, the Kitsune, my original Kitsune design, that's the character that launched Wolf King Customs back in, 2020. And we built off of that with, a badger, and then my Akupara turtles, and just so many different critter type customs that I thought that it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be a lot of fun for us to display all of those critters together. So I did a display at the La Quinta that was all the critters that Walter, Len, and I had worked on together. And I look back at that display and, again, emotional about what that meant to me at that point. The year after that is the year that we moved to the Hanover Marriott, which is where we are now. Much nicer hotel, much bigger space. And as part of that bigger space, I ended up doing a bit of a bigger display. And that was the year, and you can see my display here, that was the year that I did all of the tributes. So, while people like Eric Miller and certainly Emil Wickman, by the way, if you haven't picked up Emil's new book, Tributes, it's looks absolutely amazing. I'm going to get mine at LegionsCon. But I've been doing tribute customs as well for years, and I was inspired by what people like Emil and Eric and others were doing. So I decided to do a whole display, and this would have been at the 2023 LegionsCon, a whole display of tribute customs. And I did characters from Sandman and Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and Dungeons and Dragons. You can see it here, and I don't know if you can see it at top. There's the big reveal at the show was my ogre scale Balrog that went home with Big Dub. It is in his collection right now. Hedgehog is in here saying, we've been looking at pictures and videos of LegionsCon going by the last couple of weeks on Saturday Day Live, including the nostalgic video from 2019. That thing is a piece of history. Yeah, absolutely. Look that up on YouTube. One thing that we haven't mentioned anywhere yet, but I'll tell you right now to look out for this next week. We actually have a documentary about to drop about LegionsCon, like an hour-long documentary. If you've been to LegionsCon before and it's an important to you, you are going to get goosebumps watching this video. It is going to be emotional. If you've never been to LegionsCon, this is going to make you want to drop what you are doing, book a ticket, and get to the show. It is absolutely amazing and powerful. Once again, Brad Treadaway just killing it with this. But that's a little bit of a teaser, and I bring that up, Hedgehog, because we were looking at some of that old footage to see what we could include in the documentary. Absolutely wonderful. But yeah, just going back and seeing, I mean, back then we didn't even document it. Like I didn't even have photos of my booth at that show because we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know LegionsCon was going to become what it's become. So the fact that Nazar was recording that and, really captured that first year is absolutely amazing. Just checking all the comments here. Yeah, Brad is so incredibly talented. I get emotional with the Dragon Doc, dude. Nate, trust me, this one's gonna hit you in the feels as well. So this was my display at 2023 LegionsCon, and then 2024. This is part of my display behind me and Sir Elliot there. Last year, I did my Mythic Shoguns display where I reimagined. I had done samurai customs many times over the years, and I wanted to reimagine the realm of mythos as if it was set in a fantasy feudal Japan. So I didn't just create like, oh, here's a samurai elf. Like I reimagined the Dark Four and Hera Serpentspire and Sir Gideon and Gorgo and all these iconic characters from the story. I reimagined them as essentially samurai-esque type of characters. So that's what I did last year. And again, great feedback. It seemed to be very well received. But that brings me to this year. And the year started, and I did not know what to do for this year's display. I knew I wanted to do a themed display again, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And part of the reality is I have been customizing a lot less than I used to. There's a very practical reason for that, and it's because I'm so busy with other stuff. But beyond that, it's also because I'm so blessed and fortunate that some of the ideas that I have that in the past would have become customs are now figures in the line. These right here, these are figures. These are the Crossroads figures that are going to be at LegionsCon. Those are figures that absolutely would have appeared like in my customizing like collection. They would have been things I would have customized years ago. Someone offering me $500 for that custom Uchak. Whew. Okay. That's like a meal numbers right there. That's tempting. I didn't plan to sell that, but we'll see. Anyway, you got me off track. You got me off track with a big dollar amount. I could buy lots of cool vintage stuff for that. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, these types of characters are totally ones that I would have done customs of years ago. But now, instead of creating customs, they're actually being released in the line, which is insane. There's other things. I had 2 themes in mind, 2 series of customs that I was going to do for this year that I had to scrap for different reasons. One of them was because because it's something you're going to see at some point. Okay. That's all I can say about that. Like, I had to scrap the idea because it's something you're going to see. And the other one is something you're going to see as well. So literally, I had ideas, and they're not necessarily like, oh, I had an idea for a custom and it's going to make its way into the line. It's even cooler than that in some ways. So the point is that, and there's a third idea I had, that even though it's not something you're going to see necessarily anytime soon, if at all, but there's a chance that it could be something down the road. So I find myself having to pull back on ideas because the possibility of something similar that could, or in some cases will, be coming out in the line. And that, for me, has made it very, very difficult. So I went through 3 different ideas, custom series ideas that would have made very cool displays at this year, that I said, you know what? I can't do it. Man, are people really like pricing it up in the chat here that they're like, people are messaging me saying they want customs of mine. So that's crazy. Hit me up after the show, not while I'm live on the air, because you're gonna throw me off. People it's like Curtis with super chats. The people are throwing like big super chat custom money at me. Anyway, I digress. It was challenging to find a theme for this year. So as I stood back and was looking at the customs, trying to figure out what to do, I came to the realization that this was the 10-year anniversary of Mythic Customs, because 2016 was the first year. That's when the first Mythic Legions wave arrived in hand. So 2016 was my first year of customizing. 2016, 2017, 2018, 19, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024 brings us to my 10th year of customizing, 2025. So I kind of decided to go back to those early LegionsCon displays that had more of a mix of character types, but to still have a theme. And the theme is really to look at the 10 years, to look at the decade of work, and to really see what everything kind of lays out like. I still have my first true custom. Yes, the Carpathia's head on a blood armor body, I can still do that. But my first custom I ever painted, I actually still have. It's a blue Djinn. It came out really good, and it totally gave me a false sense of like how that I could customize, because my second one, which I also still have, was a custom of Dritz from the R.A. Salvatore books, and it's awful. Like, dude, I've made other custom Dritz figures since then that are good. This Dritz I have is bad. I still have it, and I'm going to bring it to LegionsCon as a way to celebrate those early ideas and to celebrate progress, and to celebrate, putting art and stuff out there that's not perfect, but putting it out there in order to have a record of it and to show that progress and to get better over time and to have fun. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, right? So that's my display this year. My display is going to be a retrospective of 10 years of Mythic Customs. It's going to have customs all the way back from 2016, and I'm going to bring a few customs from every single year. Like these last few years, I'll bring a couple of the Mythic Shoguns from last year because Mythic Shoguns really dominated my custom work for 2024 because I was building up to that display. The year before, it was a lot of tribute customs, so I'll bring some of that, but I'll bring some of this stuff for every one of those. I'll bring the Samurai Kitsune, which, again, one of the most important customs that I've ever done because it launched Wolf King and my friendship with Len. I'm going to bring all of that, but I'm also going to bring some new work. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to do is my goal is to have 10 new customs, 10 customs for 10 years. So that's a check, which I shudder to bring this back up because apparently it started a bit of a bidding war here in the comments. But this is one that I posted today. Greg was reaching out to me and asking me, where I got the soft goods. Dude, I've had these soft goods in my fodder bins for like a couple years now. It's a 1/6 scale piece of soft goods. Like the cape is 1/6 scale. The sword is. I literally bought this stuff and put it in a fodder bin knowing I'd get to use it eventually. And then once the Sir Uchak figure came out, I knew I was going to use it on him. And this was the perfect opportunity to actually use it, to actually display it. So this is one of the figures that will be on display at LegionsCon. Didn't intend to sell it, but it's really looking like I may be selling it. The first figure that I actually showed earlier, I think last week, was actually this one. This is one. Oh, so I got the straight poop in the comments offering me $20. He must be getting ready for Talking Conversations. I don't know. This isn't as impactful a show as last week, so we might not get Talking Conversations. But this is one that I did. So interestingly, I knew I was going to do this for a while. And this is one that, Greg said, I've been looking for these soft goods for hours today. No luck. Dude, I looked for it as well, Greg. I can't find where I got it. I got to try to find the old receipt of where I bought it. But when I did all of my tribute customs in 2023, I said I did a bunch of Lord of the Rings, and I did a group of ring wraiths. I also did all of the Fellowship, and then I did Gollum. I knew I wanted to do Sauron. I knew I wanted to use the Baradak figure, but obviously it wasn't in hand at that point. And I had even told Big Dub, who's a huge Lord of the Rings fan and who has some of my Lord of the Rings tribute customs, I said, eventually I'm going to do a Sauron. I know I'm going to use Baradak. So this is one that I've wanted to do for a while, and I put this one up earlier this week, and it's actually a pretty simple custom overall. I added some more horns to the head and to the shoulder pauldrons to really change kind of the silhouette of the Baradak figure to more match Sauron. The fact that we already have that ogre scale kind of mace is perfect. I dry brushed this entire thing to change it kind of from that Witch's Cauldron black to more of this gunmetal-y type color, which is similar to what Sauron wears. I added some custom soft goods to it. And then probably my favorite little touch on this is if you look at the sculpture of the hands for Sauron, there's actually, the way that it's sculpted, there's a part of the armor that really looks like the shape of a ring. So on his right hand, I just painted that little area gold to simulate the fact that he's got the one ring on. So this is a pretty fun one. This will be this will be on display at LegionsCon. If this is going to be sold, I know that it's going home with Big Dub. So no point in offering me something on this. This is going to Big Dub, if anybody. Dub, and Big Dub is in the chat here, probably staking his claim. The gunmetal and horns really make it so good, but having the ring is it. Yeah, it's funny because someone earlier joked, Curves joked about, it was nice to have LBC back. So LBC, meaning Lazy Boy Custom, is a fun little nickname that Travis from the My Wife Is Going to Kill Me podcast gave me years ago. And while some would think that it's an insult, it certainly wasn't meant like that from those guys. It was meant as a joke. But I actually love the idea of a Lazy Boy Custom because I'm all about the path of least resistance. Like, why would you want to do more work than is necessary? I love the idea of solving a problem in the best, most efficient way possible. So much, my background before customizing, I was never a painter before I started customizing, but I have been a designer for decades now. And all of my kind of background in design theory really is stuff that fuels the way I approach my customs and the way that I approach the work that I do with Four Horsemen Studios. And I love this idea of like, hey, how can you accomplish what you need to accomplish? How can you make it exactly what it needs to be without overdoing it? Like it sounds lazy to say with a minimal amount of effort, but there is an efficiency in that. So a custom like this that realistically is not a ton of work, but hits all the right points. To me, I love smart customs like that. Just sharing a couple, and I don't have pictures of all of the customs that I'm going to be bringing to LegionsCon this year, but I have shared a few of them. And this is one of the ones that I showed the other day as well. So again, I mentioned having the soft goods from that Sir Uchak figure in my fodder bin for years. I've had these gloves in my fodder bin for years as well. So those gloves came from an old McFarlane Toys Deluxe Creech figure. It's a figure that I used to have in my collection, and years ago it fell and it broke. And I was like, you know what? I don't need this anymore. But I pulled the gloves off and I said, at some point, I'm going to find a use for these. And interestingly, at one point, I wanted to put them on a smaller figure. If you've ever read the comic Battle Chasers, there's a little girl female character that's got a pair of big, like almost like power gloves. I almost imagined using it like that. But I very quickly realized they're way, way too big for a 1.0 figure. Like they look stupid. They don't work at all. So I back to the drawing board. And then when I put them up with an ogre, I was like, wow, these look great because they are big enough to look oversized, but not so big to look comical. And I just had to figure out where to actually use them. Once I got the Stavros figure in hand, and that figure, Stavros the Unwavering, that is, of course, a Big Bad Toy Store exclusive. They still have that figure available. That became the base figure here. And I added some soft good pants. I added the lower legs from a Kragnar figure. I added a harness from Kragnar. I painted those up and I added those hands really to create this like kind of Dragosair style brawler. I really, really love this. Yeah, someone's saying that Gully was the character's name in Battle Chasers. So this is another one that I put together recently. So weirdly, I didn't go into this like saying, oh, I'm going to do lots of ogre figures. It's just weird that the first three that I finished were all actually ogre scale figures between the Sauron, this Dragosair, and that Sir Uchak. So those three will be there. I do have one more to show tonight, and it's actually one that I haven't actually shown yet. And there's a little bit of a story behind this one. So I'll bring this down for now. So I was at MuskeeCon this year. I don't do a lot of customs these days. I don't sell a lot of customs these days. I've never done commissions, right? Years ago, the only commissions I ever really did, I shouldn't say that. I've done a few, but very few. And it's been a long time. I had a few projects I worked on years ago that were crazy fun, where I had a few people pay me and just say, I want you to make me something. Like, I don't care what you make me, just make me something. And we called it a blind box custom. And I did ask them some questions like, okay, what kind of characters do you like? Do you want a hero? Do you want a villain? I kind of zoned in on what things they found of interest to eventually create the custom. But it was great because I could work, at my own pace. I could work just on something I thought was cool. And I did a few of those blind box customs, and I was fortunate that everyone I delivered them to seemed to really, really like the final product. But it's been a long time. I actually think the last custom commission I kind of did was for my friend Curtis. And I think that was actually last year at LegionsCon, where I had done a custom years ago. I did a custom series, almost like reimagining the prince, like Disney princesses as like warriors and mythos. I had seen some art of the Disney princesses as warriors, and I just thought it was really cool. So I wanted to kind of springboard off of that. And I had done one where I essentially turned a Hera Serpentspire head into kind of like a voodoo queen style character. And it was supposed to be Tiana from Princess and the Frog. And I called her Tiana, Princess of the Frogs. I displayed her with some bog goblins and stuff. And I almost combined the character of Tiana with the villain character from Princess and the Frog with the skull, like, voodoo face paint. And it's a custom that Curtis had always wanted. He used to bug me for it all the time. And I did not want to sell it because I really, really liked that figure. But I ended up making a second one, which is also something I rarely have made a second of a custom. But I did make a second one, pretty much an exact copy. I got all the parts I had used, and I made one for Curtis. That's probably the last commission I did. But that brings us to MythiCon this year. And I sat down with Tanya from Legions Ladies, who's absolute sweetheart, one of my favorite people in the world. Love talking to Tanya. We did a bit of an interview, and she asked me if I would make a custom for her. And I said, what are you thinking? Because she knows I don't do that. And she said she wanted a fairy. And she said, I don't care. You do whatever you want. Like, I want a fairy, whatever you want to do. And it was funny because keep in mind, MythiCon is in March. So I have done a fairy. It's right here. Like, this is the fairy that I would have designed. It's literally the nymph from the Crossroads set. So it was funny that she was asking me that because I had already kind of been in that mindset. So stepping back, I thought, like, okay, if I'm going to do a different fairy, what would I do for her? And interestingly, talking about, and Curtis is in the chat right here, talking about his prized possession, which makes me so happy, Curtis. That makes me, for me, that's always been kind of a part of this. Don't get me wrong, the money's nice because the money allows me to buy other cool stuff. But from the early days, I'm tangent. I told you I'm going to do that tonight. The idea of people wanting something of myself in their collection has always been very, very special to me. I have no illusions. I'm not the best painter when it comes to this stuff. I'm good. I'm sufficient. I can do it. But there's plenty of people that are much, much better than I am. I do think that I have cool ideas, and I love what I do. And I think that comes through. So the fact that people want a piece of that for their collection never fails to touch me. And that's why it touched me when Tanya asked me to make her something. So I went back and I thought about it. And one of the first fairies I did, and back to that series of Disney princesses, the first one that I did was meant to be Mulan. And I used an Artemis silver cord head. And I used some armor from an Articulated Icons samurai figure. Something that I would then do a lot of. I did a whole bunch of figures, even beyond my Mythic Shoguns last year, that combined Legions with that armor from the Fwoosh's Articulated Icon series. And I had done an Artemis silver cord, and I made her, she was very beautiful, right? She was very elegant. And I decided to take another stab at that character. Once again, like I did with Curtis, make a second version of a custom, but do it kind of differently. And Curtis is giving me props here. So Curtis is saying, I can say that this show and Pumpkin King got more people started on customizing than anything else. That makes me so happy, Curtis. And it's one thing I miss a lot is doing my customizing videos, and I'm actually taking steps right now to start doing those again, to get back to that. Because, one of the things that is so important to me is when I meet people and it shows, and they're watching your videos, following your recipes, really opened up the doors to me to start customizing. And I never realized I would be doing stuff like this. When people have said I made it seem accessible to them, and that's what got them over their trepidation of getting started, there's nothing more important to me than hearing that. So I want to start doing that again. But back to the custom at hand. So I decided, you know what? I want to go back. I want to do a new version of that character, but I want it to be more wild. I want it to be less elegant and more. One of the things I love about this concept of the Fae is just how unpredictable and chaotic and wild they can be. So I'll share this now. This is the first time that anyone other than Tanya has actually seen this. This is a custom that I did specifically for Tanya. And again, it's very indicative of the previous kind of Artemis Samurai custom I did. Got some different parts. Part of making her wild is just taking those Krotos horns and using those on her head really changes her profile up quite a bit, gives her that very wild type look and everything. Even her body, the original one I did was fully armored, and this one I very much wanted her to have a lot of bare flesh sewing. I wanted her to feel you see a lot of fairies that have very little covering their bodies. I wanted it to have that feel that the armor had gotten put on top of it. So super happy to say that Tanya really likes this, and this is going to be on display at LegionsCon, but it's going to be going home with Tanya. So very cool. I do see some comments in the chat here. Let me just look at what everyone's saying. Oh, thank you very much. Trailblazer. Wow. Matt telling me that my painting started with just the dots. Yep. Very good. I love that. I always love that story. That's one that touches me. Let's see. Billy Beige, I have a whole playlist of your paint tips on my channel, LBC. Yeah, it's been a while, but I want to get back to that. I really do. Kirby saying, you're so right. Watching Mythic Conversations is like going to a very cool art school. And again, I dig the fact that I feel like my background as a designer gives me a different perspective of how I approach these. And certainly I'm not the only designer that's doing this. But because my background is not in painting, my background is in design, I think that has been a big part. I mean, early on, that was a huge part of customizing, right? Because in those early days, it was way less about killer paint jobs, and it was more about okay, what pieces can I cobble together to make these customs? I love when like Curtis and others would talk about how those early Mythic Customs posts where I would use these wacky, like obscure toy lines, people would suddenly be out scrambling to find like Shadowrun figures or just all these weird lines that I would stumble into, and I'd find these parts and I'd use them in my customs. That type of like seeing the different types of parts that are available and seeing those component pieces to make something else out of them has always been very, very exciting for me. So that's a couple customs. I showed 4 of them. That's 4 of what I hope will be 10. I don't have 10. I have a list of 10 on my phone. I have a list of 10 figures that I want to make for LegionsCon. Maybe I shouldn't have said I was going to do 10 for my 10 year. Maybe I should have just said I'm going to do some new ones for my 10 year. But you know what? Going back to that original kind of exercise that started so much of this, where I said, I'm going to post something new every single day for a year. And then after a year, I'm going to keep doing it. I did it for 2 full years. That forced creativity, I'm embracing that again and I'm enjoying it. I'm no less busy than I've always been, while all this is going on. I've been doing a lot of writing for this upcoming wave, which is epic, absolutely so epic. I cannot wait for, 3 weeks from today, well, not from today, but 3 weeks-ish. So 3 weeks from today will be the start of Mythic Weekend. That'll be the Wednesday night, which means it's just a little bit more than that for that Friday for that G-Con. I'm so excited for what we have to reveal. So I'm knee deep in that right now, doing all of the writing. The bios all exist. We're just tying it all together. I'm writing social content and putting together presentations. So this is a very exciting time, very creative time for sure. But amidst all of that, I'm forcing myself to be creative with the customs. And it's been exciting. It's been invigorating because, like all year, this year, because last year I had the Samurai project. So throughout the year, I was whittling away at that because the Samurai project was, I shudder to say, easy. The customs were complex at times, but the idea was easy because I had very, very firm, guards for this. It was like, I knew that they were going to be samurai-like customs, and I knew it was going to be characters in mythos. So I had a list of all the characters I wanted to do, and it was just like, okay, I did Scapular. Next, I'm going to do Irithyr. Okay, I'm going to do Hera. And I just went through all that. So I really had like a roadmap to follow for last year. And this year, because I got started late, because I had so many ideas that I got excited for and then had to abandon, it took me a while to really come to where I am now. But it's been exciting. It's been invigorating to get back there and to start painting again. So thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do that. But on that note, I have mentioned that there's a chance that this is going to be the final Mythic Customs display at LegionsCon. I'm certainly going into it thinking that this would be a good way to go out. I'm, of course, going to be at LegionsCon every year, but the struggle of having ideas that I want to put, it's hard because there are so many things I want to do customs of that I genuinely just cannot do, because if I show it, it's going to step on some toes with some other projects that we are going to be doing. So it has been hard. Like, if you can imagine saying okay, you have all these cool ideas, but you can only do 20% of them. And in some cases, it's the least cool 20% at the show, because all the other stuff is either things that you want in the line or it's too close to something else that's already being done in the line. It makes it hard. And I don't just want every year to set a table up and bring a bunch of customs that I did in past years. I really do take a lot of pride in curating these displays. So who knows? If next year, if I have a great idea to do something next year, I guarantee you I will do it and I will be there. But at the same time, there is something cool about saying, you know what? This is the 10-year anniversary. Let's do a retrospective of 10 years of customizing and celebrate not only the work that we've had up to this point, but really celebrate the path forward. Because I mean, I'm not going anywhere. It's just the way that my ideas are being consumed by the community has changed. So that's where I am right now. That's, like I said, it's a very interesting time of year. This is such a hectic time of year, as is normally, with LegionsCon, and I have like triple duty where I've got a display that I want to have at the show. I run LegionsCon with Joe Viteri, and then of course I also, all of my responsibilities with Four Horsemen Studios, being intern for a day, being G-Con, and it's everything. So there's no shortage of work to do right now, but that's where I am. I'm feeling very introspective, whatever. Looking at the comments here. No, thank you very much. All my customs are awesome. I very much appreciate that. People saying that Tanya's custom looks great. I love this comment. So Hasbro had no idea they were selling so many Kylo Rens. There was a point that I was using the Black Series Kylo Ren, the first one. I was just using it over and over again. The soft goods, like the cape style piece. And I've told this story before. I actually, because Amazon was clearing them out. They were like $9 or whatever. And it was a great purchase. It was great fodder for that price. And I got to a point where I had ordered so many on Amazon. I mean, it was 20 something that I had ordered over the span that Amazon stopped selling them to me. I literally got to a point that Amazon, I wish I would have screen capped the error message. It would not sell me anymore. I had someone that I worked with at the time buy me some additional ones. I was like, maybe they're actually out and it's not just me. Nope, his order went through fine. But yeah, I used a lot of Kylo Rens. When will there be another Toy Room tour? I'd love to do one soon. It's kind of hard because I actually, if I'm going to do another one, I don't want to just like film it and narrate. I'd rather someone film me. Like hell, I wish I could get Brad to come down here and do it, but it's a long way to just, for my own ego, say, come film my toy room. But yeah, I'd love to actually be on camera, taking people through it and showing them and explaining everything rather than being behind the camera. So at some point, for sure. Just checking out all the comments here. Are those the Wings Dirk design? I assume you mean on the figure I just showed. And if you are meaning these, no, these are from an old Marvel Legends Wasp figure, which again just shows like this figure right here. So this has got, it's an Artemis build. I think her body is part Juno, part Artemis. It is a pair of wings from a Marvel Legends Wasp. It is armor and weapons and that head crest piece from Articulated Icon Samurai. The horns are from a Krotos. And actually the soft goods skirt she's wearing is from Darla Ackerman. So there you go. That's the combination of parts that are on that particular figure. Comments here. No. Yes, Talking Conversations was talking about filming collections. So I did a Space Kook action figure, dude. I have not lit the head up yet. That's not what I'm going to bring to LegionsCon just because it's not a custom. I literally just modified the flames on a zombie head and threw it on a Velok and just painted over his like insignias for like Ox Crew and Axor 3 and stuff. So that's one I'm not going to bring. It's super cool. I dig it, but I'm also not done with it. So I've got to figure out how I'm going to light that. Just going through all my tabs here to see if I wanted to show something that I missed. And no, I think I got all of it. I think I showed everything I want to show. But that's what I got for tonight. That's kind of what I'm working on. That's what I've been up to. Like I said, it's exciting stuff. Rick Jones, did you know it's an expensive custom? Again, I keep saying it's been in my fodder bin. My fodder bins are extreme. And I've sold a lot of fodder over the years. I sold buckets of fodder, bags of fodder at LegionsCon last year. I still have so much of it. I don't have any more to show right now. Those are the only ones that are actually done. I don't have any, I have 4 of the 10 customs done. I'm going to look on my phone here. So I'm going to go to my list of customs that I have to do. So I do have another one that I did. Let me see. Yeah, I don't have a picture. So this is funny. I have 5 listed here, and I think one of them I actually have to take off because I just decided we're going to do something similar to that in the line. So even my customs that I'm planning out this year, I'm having to kind of censor myself. So I do have a handful that are left to go that are not really started yet. So we'll see if I can get them all done. But I don't have any. But again, so what it's going to be, the display, it's going to be 10 different years. A couple of the early years, there's going to be only 2, maybe 3 figures from that year. As we get there's a period that we get to, especially once I start working with Wolf King, that it's genuinely hard to determine what to bring, because there was a point where I was so prolific in how many customs I was doing, because a lot of those, that span of 2 years that I posted every day, a lot of those customs don't exist anymore. As you can imagine, I did a lot of stuff, and if actually, there's probably some new people that may not know about this. Let me see. If you go, bring this up. This is a blast from the past. If you go to pumpkin-king.com/mythic, this was a website. I have not updated this in literally years. But there was a point that what I would do is every time I would post a custom, I would post it on my Legions page. Yes, I do remember the LBC Saturday sales, for sale Saturdays. And then I would post it here, right? So all of these, what would happen is I would post, a link to the Instagram where I talk about it. I would post a bunch of photos, and then I would post the recipe. And, this is a very easy recipe, so that one is not too hard. But I'd have some others that had, much, much more complex recipes, as you can see here. And this was an alchemist that I did. Dude, this is all, I don't have this anymore. This is a mashup of parts and things that I did in the very early days. This website, while I haven't updated it in years, I've left it online just as kind of a historical record of all of that time. Even just looking here, actually, ironically, I do have a handful of customs that are in that first couple rows still. But a lot of these have been broken down either because I've upgraded them. I had an idea that I needed some of the parts that were in those figures, and I didn't love the figures as much anymore. So I made a change. And you know what? I'll do this right here. Someone's asking for the link. I'll create a banner, so I'll put it right on screen. PumpkinKing.com is actually a website I have had for 20-something years at this point. So that's where it is, pumpkinking.com/mythic. If you want a real fun, if you just go to pumpkinking.com, you can actually see a really, really young Jeremy. This is 20-something years ago, but that is a fun thing to see there. Again, this was at one point my professional website for my web design career. So that's a very fun little look there, but let's get right off that. We don't need to see that. But yeah, lots of cool stuff here. You know, I left this up because this is just a historical record. A lot of these don't exist. This is really kind of a testament to that period of those 2 years where PGG do not scream. PGG knows that exists. PGG's got stuff on Jeremy that they're very politely keeping to themselves. Yes, Jeremy version 1. But this is a testament to, you know, really a record of those 2 years of creativity. And again, I'm just in the B's right now, and because it's all alphabetical by characters. You know, if I just keep scrolling this down, these are all customs that I did during that span of about 2 years where I just pumped out custom after custom. And while I look at this work today, and certainly a lot of it is very amateurish by today's custom standards, including my own custom standards, again, this is a great record of what it took to get to this point. You know, this is, I've said this before, that there's muscle memory in customizing. And I don't just mean, you know, getting better at painting, just in all of this stuff. When you start doing this, the way that parts go together, the way that, you know, you see other toy lines and other parts and translate all of that, including stuff just like painting. It really starts to, you start to hone those skills, right? That's the way it works. So I have that there. You can check that out. I'm going to bring this off screen now, but that's cool stuff. So that's what the display is going to be this year. It's going to kind of be a record. The tough part is figuring out which customs to bring. Do I still have the ice skeleton? I actually do still have the ice skeleton. That is still there. That might actually be one of the ones that's coming. That was a very early one. And it's from a year where I don't have, like, a lot of the other stuff I did that year, I probably don't have anymore. So that's probably coming. But with that, we are coming up on 8:57. I don't think I really have a ton of time for questions. I can tell you, of course, that, you know, LegionsCon, it's the ticket sales have slowed a little bit over the last week or so, but we are very close to hitting that point where we're sold out. Because again, only being 3 weeks out, we had to order the badges, so we only have so many badges. We will have Straight Poop is saying no questions. We will have day of show ticket sales. We never sell single day tickets online. If you want single day access, you just got to come to the show that day. It'll be $30 for a single day. It's cash only sales. To get in, they'll give you a bracelet instead of getting the badge, and you'll have access for that day. We talked about a few weeks ago when I went over the kind of the schedule for LegionsCon. You know, I did mention that the Friday night, if you do pre-purchase the 2-day badges at LegionsCon.com, if you're going to be at the hotel on the Friday night from 6 to 9 p.m., you're going to be able to pick up those badges early. So on Saturday, you don't have to wait in the registration line. You can literally just get right into one of the lines to do something awesome. And of course, those tickets are available at LegionsCon.com. And with that, I think I'm going to call it an evening. Not real sure what I'm going to be doing next week, but it'll be something awesome. It'll be another Mythic conversation. So thank you, everyone. I cannot wait to see you at LegionsCon. And for everyone who has supported all of my stuff, all of my customizing over these 10 years of Mythic Customs from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for allowing me to do this and supporting my creativity and my art. Good night, everyone.